We have talked about climate impacts on health, but I just wanted to add a tiny bit more of a meta study which took large number of published papers which link specific climate change events to diseases or climate change processes to diseases, and look at the number of diseases that are derived from the synthesis of all the published studies as to their response to climate change and the transmission methods as well. This kind of a figure is obviously always important to look at the impact of greenhouse gas emissions on the link of cascading down into the climate processes. So here we have obviously warming being the first one, but you also have ocean climate change happening. So warming also affects the oceans. The atmospheric warming, global warming, also affects the oceans, which in turn affect the cyclones, hurricanes, tropical cyclogenesis, sea level rise, of course, and the evaporation. Warm atmosphere is a thirsty atmosphere, wants more moisture. The Clausius-Clapeyron relation, non-exponential relation between temperature and water vapor, drives precipitations, extremes, and also droughts, because when you have rainfall redistribution or more rain in one region, the moisture is stolen from another region. So these can cause storm surge, inundation, floods, and the droughts can cause heat waves and fires either directly or through the heat waves, resulting in excess vapor pressure deficit, drying of vegetation, and so on. And of course, warming also changes natural cover, but human beings are doing natural cover change as well through deforestation and so on, and greenhouse impacts the vegetation cover as well, and which can feed back to warming because of albedo changes, evapotranspiration changes, microclimate changes, and so on. So that's pretty much understood through the processes we have been looking at. So the meta study basically reports climate hazards that exacerbate diseases. Rising temperatures pose the greatest threat to disease outbreaks. For instance, warmer temperatures increased mosquito survival and biting rates, thereby increasing the spread of West Nile virus. So here we haven't even discussed the changes in pathogen levels, concentrations, their spread, and vegetation changes leading to mosquito dynamics changes, mosquito life cycle changes, and so on and so forth. So that's what this is talking about. And vegetation changes can also affect the natural human system interactions in terms of contacts with wild animals, birds, etc. So rising so these are the number of diseases made worse by the various climate variables. Rising temperatures, more than 150 diseases. Rainfall, almost 125 or so. Floods, similar number, slightly smaller, because there is a difference between rainfall and floods. When you have floods, there is much more exposure to standing water, contaminated water, mixing of water bodies with wastewater, and so on and so forth. Droughts have complicated dynamics. We've discussed this elsewhere or in my course on climate and health. When there is a drought, especially that persists for a while, people begin to reach to water bodies that are not safe, and so on. And the dynamics of snails and contacts with humans and snails and so on can change as well, leading to things like schistosomiasis and so on and so forth. Storms, of course, bring in storm surge, inundation, but also power outages, infrastructure losses, and so on, and they can have number of diseases being made worse, around 70 or so. Land cover change, vegetation change associated with mosquito population change or pathogen change, contacts with humans, so zoonotic diseases as well, and so on. Oceanic climate change can work through harmful algal blooms, pathogens, and so on. Fires bring smoke hazards, increase PM 2.5, cardiovascular diseases, and such. can also cause other issues of food security, nutrition, water shortages, and so on. Heat waves, of course, direct impact on human health, mortality, and morbidity. A lot is understood about heat waves, and of course, climate change is making the duration, intensity, and frequency of heat waves worse in many places, and that's true of rainfall and floods and droughts as well. Sea level rise, of course, can contaminate groundwater, can increase storm surge and inundation, and also can have impact on food quality, with sea level rise leading to interactions with polluted waters at the coastal regions where a lot of the fish, majority of the fish are caught, and so on. So what are the modes of transmission that change? Climate change has exacerbated more than 100 infections spread by vectors such as mosquitoes, ticks, fleas, and birds, right? So again, habitat destruction associated with direct greenhouse gas forcing or indirect human forcing, or temperature and precipitation impacts, etc., can affect life cycles of all these things and their vectors. So vector-borne diseases, number of diseases made worse is more than 100. Waterborne diseases, almost 90 or 75, 80. Airborne, 60. Direct contact, obviously made worse by climate change, is almost 55 to 60. Foodborne diseases, out of 50, and unspecified, so number of diseases made worse but mode of transmission not known, is more than every other form of transmission here as well. Okay, so with global mobility, climate change driven migrations, and climate change driven shortages of food, water, access to health, access to quality and quantity of water and food, obviously makes diseases worse. So all these things are critical, and I wanted to include that podcast here just as a supplement to the other discussions we've had thus far. Okay.